Hi everyone, in this video we're gonna learn to be a pro React developers, and we're gonna use all the professional React libraries and technologies in one single project and set it up all together. So in this video tutorial we're gonna be using Redux, Redux Toolkit, we're gonna use Apollo and Apollo GraphQL with React, all in an advanced way to just take your skills up one level. And if you're just a little bit more than a beginner, so you know the basics but you still want to be like what an advanced developer would like to do, or how big projects are set up, or if you're looking for something like complicated and something like a project structure to put your hands on for creating like your next startup or your next big project to release it online or whatever like that, well, you are actually in the right place. In this one, we're going to be having like more intermediate into advanced stuff, and we're going to combine it all together to create the best way to develop a React application with different technologies. So this is actually the actual application we're going to create at the end. It's going to be more like a project, a simple project to just demonstrate that everything, how it could be working together, from Redux Store, Redux Toolkits, and Typescript, GraphQL, style components, all of them, how it works together. And this is going to be creating like a hot anime list, all like listed from this cool website that provides us with a GraphQL API. So we're going to go through all this. And also, as I said, we're going to be using Redux Toolkit, which is the new batteries included toolset for efficient Redux development. And yeah, this one, I can tell you my personal use, this one is definitely better than the regular standard React Redux. And it's actually from the same team, but they did that, and it's much more powerful and has a lot more features into it. So that's what we're going to be learning. We're going to be learning Redux Toolkit from scratch. We're going to also be learning GraphQL, but you still need a little bit of like beginner basic knowledge of what is Redux and what is Redux Store, and well, like for example, what is GraphQL and how GraphQL works, just a basic ways to know that. And that's all you need. Just like that. So I'm not going to say this is an absolute beginner who doesn't know what is Redux or what is GraphQL or what is React or what is TypeScript. You still need a little bit of knowledge of just like a teeny tiny pieces of all of these technologies together to get started with this tutorial and to be able to follow up correctly without any issues or problems. So that's what we're going to be doing in here. We're going to be using all of these awesome technologies. We're going to be setting up a full project that has everything from scratch. And the project, it's going to be pretty big. This is the full project structure from interfaces, GraphQL schemas, TypeScript with Redux stores, selectors, and many stuff you're going to be learning throughout this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started, and we can get started by setting up the project. So what I said before is actually we're going to create a full advanced React project, and we're going to just like include the batteries for making it an advanced and like a production ready project. And I'm not going to go like for something simple. I'm going to use all the technologies that are needed pretty much to make or integrate with React in order to create this big advanced project for our professionals. So we're going to be using Redux Toolkit in that particular case, and also we're going to be learning what is Redux Toolkit and how we can use it. We are also going to be using Apollo GraphQL. If you're not familiar with that, you should already be familiar with a little bit of GraphQL, like at least what is GraphQL and how it does work, and what is kind of this type of schemas and scalar types, just the basic beginner stuff in order to be able to follow up, because I'm not going to go through all the beginners either for Apollo or GraphQL or even for like the Redux. You should already be familiar a little bit with Redux. So like what is Redux? What is Redux Store? How does state management Redux can provide? And those kind of like beginner stuff friendly. Then later on, what we can do, we can go and like grab Redux Toolkit, we can start working on it, and we can just like explain everything that Redux Toolkit provides versus the regular React Redux or the standard version of Redux we usually use with React, and what is actually the kind of differences and why you should choose Redux Toolkit versus like the regular standard Redux installation. So this is basically what I'm going to go through in here, and let's go ahead. Basically for this one, I'm going to just go ahead and use a template. So a template in here is actually provided on GitHub, which is called CRA template Redux TypeScript, which is just a Create React App template. And since like the latest version of CRA or Create React App, it now provides custom third-party templates to be able to install the scaffold throughout this project. So I'm going to be using this one, and if we go to like get started in here, go to the installation, you can clearly see that this template or this docs in here, it tells us if you want to use like Redux alone with JavaScript, you can use Create React App and My App, and you can do the template Redux. Otherwise, if you want to use TypeScript, which is in our case, we're going to be using TypeScript as well. So what you can do is you're going to use template Redux TypeScript. And this template in here is going to have everything installed for us correctly and all the Redux toolkit set up for us correctly. It's not a big deal if you already got a project that is an existing application. All you have to do is just npm install or yarn add Redux.js, then /toolkit. Then that's pretty much it. Then you can do the normal configuration of your Redux store and all the kind of simple stuff in here. I'm not going to go through this one. I'm going to use this CRI in here as use template to get stuff working and get started with the scaffolder projects for us from scratch so we can get started, install and configure the rest of stuff. So let's go ahead and open up the terminal. I believe you already all guys have a terminal in here. I'm using Linux, more specifically Ubuntu latest version in here. And what I can do is quickly go ahead and use CRA to get stuff running. So I can go ahead and copy that. I don't want to just like be a geeky a lot. So I'm going to copy all of that. Yeah, I don't want to get started real quick with this. So I'm going to rename my app. I'm going to name it React Pro Project. Click enter, and npx is going to do the job for us. It's going to grab create React app for us, and it's going to start and install all of those using yarn. So all we have to do is just sit back and wait. So that was quick. Now it's done. Everything is installed, and we got ready projects for us to go ahead and work on. So let's go ahead and cd into React Pro Project, the project we just created. I'm going to open up code or the VS Code code editor. So I'm just going to grab this one in here. I'm just going to make that one a little bit bigger. And yeah, done. So close everything. We got node modules installed, everything. And if you take a look on it, it's just like something, pretty much the normal Create React App folder structure with a public and SRC, logos, app.js, and all of that. The only difference in here, right now, we are actually using TypeScript. And if you're familiar with my projects, like my application I create or throughout my channel, and you watch a lot of my videos, you know me, I love Create React App. I just do it every single time I want to create a React application or scaffolder project real quickly. So you got the point. You should be already familiar with how we do that and why it is very important to do it that way. Now, we've got a project in here, everything we need. Let's go ahead and open up a terminal real quick. And for this project, it already does have some example to get started with. Take a look on the feature in here. It already has some like a pretty basic example how to pretty much use Redux Toolkit and how to use the API, how to use slice and all of that. I'm not going to be needing this. I'm going to completely get rid of it, delete. I'm going to go to app.jsx. I'm also going to delete all of those, and I'm going to get rid of all of those as well. So just go here, get rid of them, replace them with a hello world, pretty beautiful hello world, and take a look one more time. Yeah, hopefully everything is done. If the app folder in here, we're going to find a store, which is basically our Redux store. We're going to find the hooks, which is basically just normal React hooks. But this one, or this time, is going to be a little bit different because it's going to provide it with types. That way we are actually importing them here with use dispatch. We're importing from React Redux, but we are re-importing them, like we're going to re-export it. Then we can re-import it from our like files we're going to work with to be able to actually use the interfaces and the power of TypeScript. So that's basically what we're going to be doing here. I'm going to go back into this later on to explain what is going on. I'm just going to get rid of this. We don't have a reducer anymore. Get rid of that, and everything should be right into the place. So everything right now is good. We've got the store set up. We got everything. Let's go ahead and actually install GraphQL. Then we can go ahead and back and talk about Redux Toolkit. So for installing GraphQL, all we simply need to do is just go ahead, install the GraphQL and the Apollo GraphQL. So I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go to yarn add. So I'm gonna go Apollo /GraphQL. Then I'm gonna go normally to GraphQL. I want to make sure that I'm not wrong because I don't really like memorizing all those. I'm gonna go to here, get started. And it's Apollo client instead of Apollo GraphQL. I don't know why I did that there, but yeah. So it's Apollo clients, then GraphQL, and we install those. And those basically all the needed packages for us. So yarn add, let's go ahead and add those and wait a little bit for those to finish. Now it has been successfully installed. Let's go ahead and see on the pack.json. So we're going to see all the dependencies installed in here. We've got Apollo clients, Redux.js toolkit, testing libraries, couple of types in here we're going to be needing, React, React DOM, and the actual React DOM, GraphQL, and the Typescript version, which is basically the latest available Typescript version in here installed in our projects. Yeah, so pretty cool. Let's go ahead and actually, this is optional. It actually depends on what you want to work with. And it's more like, you know, it's different kind of personal opinions and choices. So I actually, you know me, I love using style components. So I'm going to go ahead and install style components in here to get started and work with the CSS style. So let's go ahead and add this. I'm going to clear out this. I'm going to do yarn add style components. And since we are actually on TypeScript, we're going to have, or we're going to pretty much need a typing, like the typing files for these style components to TypeScript recognize what the style component has, and just to provide the interlicense and, you know, code checking and all of that kind of features TypeScript does provide. So we're going to install style components. I'm going to do an end, just a basic Unix thing, and do yarn add again. But this time, this is going to be a development dependency only, because we're not going to be needing types for dependencies. Unless those actually needed. But on the other hand, we're going to also need types for style components only as dev dependencies. So I'm going to do types, style components, and that should be it. So let's go ahead and install those, and it should be real quick to get us up and running. And it's done. Now we got style components, and the types are actually installed right now, and everything is actually good to go. So let's go ahead and just close that, clear the console, and we can get back. And we already pretty much got a basic projects right now in here. We got a basic GraphQL Apollo installed, and we got Redux Toolkit plus React installed. So everything we would need to get started is actually installed. Now it's actually configuration time, and the stuff that needs configuration is actually Apollo GraphQL, because the other hand, for like Redux Toolkit, we already got it configured in here, like the store, which is just a basic configuration. It just does a configure store. Basically, this one, a Redux.js, is actually having batteries included, which means it already has the kind of like configuration inside of this package, and it just like export us with a couple of functions to use and to manipulate those. So it has everything underneath here. It does everything behind the scenes for us, and all we have to do is just go ahead and grab the data or grab the functions that it needs to do this. Pretty much, you know, the preparation, and you can use them to create a store and prepare all the kind of stuff in here. So this configure store is basically a normal configure store for a Redux, and you need to pass it a couple of reducers, and that's basically what it is. And here we're actually importing, or pretty much exporting, some custom types for TypeScript to be able to work with. So for the up dispatch, we are just like exporting store.dispatch. We're making these a type available, so whenever we need it, we can just go ahead and import the app.dispatch, and pretty much we are good to go. If you need like the root states, the type of the root states using TypeScript, you can grab it right this way, and the Redux or up thunk in here, which is basically not going to be needed throughout this video, but it's still, yeah, you got it right here. So yeah, pretty good. Everything is good in here. Let's go ahead and set up GraphQL real quick. Now for GraphQL, we all know that GraphQL is actually depending on a schema, and this schema should be generated, like it should be grabbed to the client, like downloaded from a server to the client. And the server is actually the endpoint that you want to point into to grab the schema. So for example, let's say you want to just like point into this anime kind of like website or GraphQL API. So this anime GraphQL API has already this schema. Otherwise, GraphQL won't be able to work. So it has this schema somewhere on the server. What we need to do is actually tell Apollo GraphQL to go ahead and download the schema for us. It should be downloaded here into the client. Now, after it gets downloaded, Apollo and GraphQL should know the exact schema to get started working with, and we should be able to know like what is the types and what are the data, the scalar types, the mutations, the queries, and everything that we can get started and work with in order to be able to query the API. So that's the basic part of GraphQL and providing a schema. Obviously, if you're actually going to do it with your own GraphQL server, so if after doing the GraphQL server setup on the server itself using Node.js, Apollo server, whatever you want, after you're doing that, you already got a schema somewhere in there. then you have to just like set up the client using the Apollo CLI to tell it that this is the Apollo or this is the GraphQL endpoint of my server. Go ahead and grab me and download this schema for me so I can get started and work on the front end as well with the same shared GraphQL schema. So that's what I'm going to be doing right here. And in fact, I'm going to go in and create a custom script that is going to automatically use the Apollo GraphQL CLI to go ahead and download me the schema and grab it right real quick. So let's go ahead and do that real quick in here. I'm going to just go ahead and do like a schema download. I'm going to add the new script. I'm going to name it schema, then colon, then download. And mainly using this colon, then whatever verb, just to separate the concerns. Like schema is just like a specific context, then download a specific context. So for example, you can have schema and you have like, for example, schema download, then another script, schema fetch, and yada, yada, yada. This should be really, really, useful for you to create a bunch of scripts and to keep, states of them and manage them and all that kind of stuff. Now, for this one, I'm going to be using the Apollo CLI to make sure we do that. So how we can go ahead and grab the Apollo CLI? So let's go ahead and install it globally. You can use npx to just like run it whenever you want, but I would rather install it globally because npx sometimes does quite some time or takes a little bit of time to grab the schema and all that kind of stuff. And if you got like internet outage or any interruption throughout the internet, well, you got a problem, you can't download schema. But it depends on the scenario you want to work with. You can use npx. So for me, I'm not going to be like deploying all of that or all kind of that stuff. I'm just going to use for development only. I'm going to use in npx, and npx does work a lot better for me. So I'm going to do npx Apollo, and this is the Apollo CLI, and all you have to do is just go like service, then download. Then this particular command is going to do like download a schema for us. Then we have to provide it with an endpoint. And for the endpoint, I mean the actual server endpoint, like the GraphQL server endpoint. And not only the server name, like not only the domain name, for example, like google.com. No, the full endpoint to your GraphQL. For example, google.com, then / then GraphQL. Or if you got like a subdomain hosting that GraphQL API, it's going to point something like graphql.google.com. You got the point. So that's what I mean, and that's what I want to point it to. So the server API in here, and for our case, we're going to be using this anime kind of like tracking website I said before, and this one likely provides us with a GraphQL API. So all we have to do is like GraphQL, and it uses the GraphQL or the GraphQL pretty much UI in here, and it looks pretty great, and you can just go ahead and test throughout this one directly on the site and test some queries. You can even take a look on, what type of queries are available, the data types, the scalar types, what are the queries available, all the kind of stuff in here. So that's what I'm going to be pointing into. I'm going to go back. I'm going to point this endpoint into this. And last but not least, we have to give it like the last argument, which is the output or the destination folder we're going to output the generated schema. So I want it to go to src, then up, then I'm going to create another folder called GraphQL, and basically inside of that, I'm going to name this schema, or I'm going to name this GraphQL-schema.json. And by the way, this is a JSON schema. Make sure to add the JSON extension at the end, otherwise it will just be crappy and it won't work for you. So that's it. That's basically all we have to do. Just go ahead and use a schema. And the reason I chose a script in here because this one is going to help you a lot. You don't want to just go and grasp every single time you want to update the schema. You go and run this really long, ugly command every single time. You just like run the script. You got it right. Okay. So yeah, as I'm pointing here, every single time the schema changes on the server, it has to be downloading, or you have to update your schema locally on the client. Otherwise, it won't work for you as intended. So let's go ahead and grab this real quick. I'm going to use yarn. I'm going to do schema and colon, then download. And this one's going to run npx. It might take a couple of seconds to fetch the actual Apollo CLI for us, then downloads the schema, then just going to place it inside like up. And we're going to create a folder for us called GraphQL, and we are good to go. And my bad, actually, this shouldn't be actually GraphQL. It should instead be just only GraphQL, because the GraphQL is actually this UI that you see, but the actual endpoint for the GraphQL API is actually / GraphQL, not GraphQL. So just a quick mistake in here, and that's why it gave me an error 404 not found. Just like saving that, rewriting the command, it should work and it should generate for you a schema. So make sure to spell it right and to get the actual endpoint URL right, otherwise it will just give you ugly errors and 404s. And there you go, the schema is now loaded and ready to use for us. So if you take a look up GraphQL, we got GraphQL-schema.json. If you take a look on this really big JSON, because it really like the actual API or the actual GraphQL server I'm just like pointing into has this huge schema. It has a lot of different queries, a lot of fields, a lot of data to manage. It's actually an anime list website. It's just a big gigantic database. That's why you're seeing all of that. So yeah, it's just like all the data in here, some scalar types, query types, field types, all the kind of stuff like GraphQL kind of provide. And this schema pretty much going to provide us all the data we need and all the actual types and the knowledge we need in order to be able to query like the actual server from the client side in here using Apollo GraphQL. So we got the schema, one step to go, and we're actually done with that. Now you got the script, you can run it whenever you want, and that's actually a good way to get started. Now, pretty simple. Now we got everything we need. We got set up GraphQL to at least get started with it. There's still a lot of other more setup need to be done, and we got the app in here and everything we're going to be needed through. Now let's go ahead and run our React application. So I'm going to do yarn stamped and just basically the scripts that you use for create React app. I guess I'm having another one running. I'm not going to be running on port 30. I'm going to run a 31 or 301, and that should get it up and running. So let me get rid of this one. That should work. We got Redux application. We got hello world already, and that is looking pretty great. Now the endpoint for this, to actually show you exactly, guys, what I mean, just to understand how to use GraphQL with Redux and Redux Toolkit and React and all of them together with this gigantic professional projects, we have to go ahead and create something simple, something kind of like a basic application, and put everything in action for you guys to actually understand how everything can be connected together and how all of these technologies can work together to create the professional kind of like project and make it pretty much, you know, worth the name professional. So this is the server and this is the GraphQL I'm going to be testing along, and this is what the schema I'm going to be using, of course, for debugging, all the kind of stuff. Let me zoom in a bit, because I'm gonna be needing to look into like a lot of data in here as we go forward. Now let's go ahead and set up a couple of things. I'm gonna go like close this one. We don't need it right now. I'm gonna go to the app and just gonna go ahead and create a couple of like, you know, containers using the style component. Now before that, let's go in index.css. I'm gonna just make sure HTML, body, and root, which is just basically the root container that React is going to be rendered on. I'm going to make sure to have width to be 100% and height to be 100%. There you go. Looks good. Looks promising anyway. And for this one, also I'm going to be needing an app container. So we're going to go ahead with styled div. I'm going to make it take full width as well, full height. And yeah, I believe I might need a flex and a flex direction to be column, and as well align items to be on the center. Okay, sounds good. I'm not gonna go into deepest CSS stuff in here, just to make a decently looking website with a decent style and a decent alignments and layouts and all of that. So just I'm making sure that works perfectly. Now we got the app.js in here up and running. Take a look on it. Now it is centered and everything as we want it to be. Now let's go ahead and create our homepage container. So for the folder structure, like my optionated folder structure, and that folder structure I'm going to be using right now is actually, I learned this through like a lot of projects I started up, a lot of projects I created, and also by working on a lot of boilerplates that are being used by industrial, you know, big companies like Airbnb, Facebook, like really big companies and teams working on these boilerplates. And yeah, I'm gonna just basically use just a slice of this portion of the actual projects and the folder layout and all the kind of stuff in there. So instead of the app folder, I'm going to create two other folders, one called containers and one other one is going to be called components. So if you're asking why I did create these two specific containers with two specific names. So this one, the containers folder, is just going to basically like the main pages or the main biggest part of our like application. You can imagine those are like pages, since right now on the website, we're going to have like a multi-page application, right? So this container is going to hold like different folders. Each folder is going to have like, it's going to represent a single web page on the website. So for example, right now I'm going to be creating a home page, and I love to put in pages like starting with a capital letter in here to tell them that this is a page. And I love also to use TSX in here and name this index, because this is going to be entry point of the home page. Then you can have as many other files as you want. You can name them whatever, but this one is critical. Name it index.tsx, because this is the entry point of that particular folder of the home page and of that particular container. You can name it whatever you want, but it does the job perfectly. So this for the containers. For the components, they are mainly like dummy components that all they do just like receive props and render stuff to to the browser pretty much. So that's all they do. They don't manage state, they don't know about state, they don't know about the Redux store. They're just like dummy components. You give them whatever props and they manage the props. They might have a little bit like internal state on them, but they don't know the global store Redux state that the app has, so they can't actually pollute the actual Redux store or the global states, and this is safer to use, this kind of like pattern to be able to use it. And this is actually like called dummy components. You can call them whatever, but that's what they do in there. Okay, so that's a basic structure. That's a pretty basic structure that we can go ahead and get started working with. Now, index.csx in here is going to be like the entry point for our home page. So I'm going to open up or import React real quick. So I'm going to go export right now. I'm going to export a function. It's going to be home page, and it's going to have props and all of that. Now, props can be used that way because we are using TypeScript. We're not on a normal, regular, standard JavaScript. We have to provide interfaces and typings for every variable, for every argument that we provide. Now, let's go ahead and create an interface. And the way I like to put in this, the way I like to create my React components is actually by defining interfaces that define the props for the particular components. Then we can, either you can like export the interface or not, that doesn't really matter. But what matters is actually you export the component and the props is actually typed and strongly typed, and it has the types of that particular interface of the props. The naming convention actually is actually starting with an I, and if this one stands for interface, then whatever the component is, like I homepage, then you prepend it, or you pretty much append it with a props, because this is an interface meant for props. So all we have to do in here, just provide iHome, page, props, and good to go. So you can provide whatever props in here inside of this interface, and they can be directly typed in the home page. But mainly for a home page, we're not going to receive a lot of props because this is like a root level home page, so it's not going to be called by something else other than just like, for example, React router or the index.jsx or something like that. So you won't expect a lot of props to come in from these. Okay, pretty cool. So let's go ahead. Now we got the interface, we got everything. Let's go ahead and create a container. So I'm going to create a container for the home page. I'm going to import styled components again. I'm going to use div, and I'm going to make this to take full width, full height again. Make it display flex and flex direction to the column, and align items to be in center. Pretty sweet. Now I'm going to go ahead and render up the container. I'm going to have an H2 or H1 for the title, and I'm going to name these like hot anime, and just going to be like having a list underneath it that is the hottest anime of the month or of the day or whatever that API is going to actually give us. So we're going to render it beneath as a list. We're going to do the images, all the data we can grab from the GraphQL API. We're going to render it and organize it properly. Okay, so we got hot name in here, we got H1 going there, we got the container, we got everything we would like to get started working with. Now this is the home page, we got components, we got up, and all the folder is actually, composed correctly and everything as we want it to be. Now it's actually the time to go ahead and put our hands into the Redux Toolkit. And we start actually setting up and adding the Redux, like a reducer to the home page. So for doing that, if you're familiar with regular Redux, you would actually need to add a reducer. Like you could be calling it like a reducer.ts or for TypeScript or whatever. But in our case, since we are using Redux Toolkit, it's a bit different than the regular standard Redux implementation. So this one is called a slice, and slice can be called whatever. So you can call it like slice.tsx or whatever you want. So what I would like to pretty much call this one is actually homepage slice, okay? And this is just like a naming convention because later on, once we import that, we know that this is a homepage slice, okay? So this is going to be a TypeScript, and this is going to do all the magic for us. So for this slice, what we're going to be having it is going to like do a const. I'm going to name it homepage slice. And it's going to have, and I'm going to import create slice function. And this one is actually, in fact, going to be imported from Redux.js toolkit. So I'm going to do import slice in here. And the slice is just basically a function that accepts a particular objects that, you know, have a couple of fields and all the kind of stuff. And those fields can pretty much tell how the slice is going to be created. And for a slice, if you're wondering what is a slice, it's actually like a reducer then plus a couple of other stuff. So if you're familiar with Redux, you got a reducer, you got an actions, and you got like the state itself, like the selectors of the state. So for those to work, the slice combines them all together and puts them into something called a slice. So this one, it takes an object. So we're going to provide it with an object real quick. And this one takes a name. Every single slice needs a name, and this name should be unique. Like you can imagine it as your reducer name, and this should be unique across, you know, the whole project and the whole application you've got in here, the whole Redux store pretty much. For this one, I'm going to name it homepage. That's it. Should make the job and should do it perfectly. Now we're going to have reducers. And this one is actually in itself is basically like an object. So this reducers object, take a look on this, a mapping from action types to action type specific case reducer. And this one is like the same way you do create action, but instead you define them in here and the whole reducer is going to be defined on this particular object. So what I mean by this, for example, let's say we got like a function, and this function we want, like on this reducer, what we want it is actually to add into like a counter to the state. So for that, what we need is actually to create an initial state. And this initial state should be typed, which means we should be adding an interface to all of that. But anything other than that, so to make sure that the initial state is actually going to be working as expected, so I'm going to do like a counter. I'm going to do counter start at 0. Okay, and here I need to provide the initial state. Okay, so for this one, I can do like set or increments counter. And by default, for every single reducer, for every single function that gets added in here, it takes first the state, the actual global store state, and second, it takes the actual action. And you remember, for every reducer, for an action, what it does have is just basically a type action or an action type and the actual payload it has. That's basically all it does have pretty much. And my mistake in here, so I have to provide it that way. I don't know, I'm getting this error, the parser failed to match. Is there like another one? Yeah, indeed. So that's all you need. Now to make that work, actually you have to return. Like you can return whatever. You can do, for example, return a new counter. And how you do that is just like return state dot counter plus equals, for example, where's the equals plus 1. And that is it. This one is gonna like make that work perfectly for us. You know, you don't have to return for this state to be actually working because it can still work in without return. Sometimes if you don't want to like mutate the state directly, this is not actually a mutation, by the way, because it's going to use immutable.js, and by just like doing this one, the reducer will know automatically that you assign something, like you assign like a variable, new variable in here. It's going to copy the state, create a new copy of it, and it's going to assign this new copy to the actual store state. So that way ensures immutability. I'm not going to be talking about this, but sometimes you can return, but since here we're actually directly mutating that, it's all good. Pretty simple, pretty straight to the point, and you got +1. And by the way, I'm saying that this is just like mutating the state. Redux or the reducer in here is not actually mutating the state. Just for those of you who are gonna come in the comments and say, oh, Redux should never mutate the state. Yeah, you're right. And this is not mutating the state. In fact, this is just like an implementation that is, just you do it because it's easy to do it this way. But the actual slice function in here, it's actually smart enough to know that we did a mutation in here. It's going to copy this one, create a brand new copy of the state, and it's going to assign it to the actual store. So you're not actually going to do a mutation to the actual global React state. Hope I'm clear on this. So that's pretty great. That's all we have to do to create actually a slice and to create a reducer. So right now, you don't have to create new actions. You don't have to create actually a reducer, all in a single place. Now, how we can grab the data, or how we can export the action in order to manipulate that, how we can export this particular function. Luckily, the slice have all of that covered. So we can do, if you take a look on the actual home page slice, there's actions, case reducers, a name, and a reducer. And this is the reducer that should be exported and imported into the actual store. And those are actually the actions that you got right down here. So all we have to do in here, we can go ahead and export. We can go into export from home page slice.actions, and whatever you want to export in here, for example, should be const increment counter. All right, and we should also do export default home page slice.reducer. And that is it. Pretty simple as that. You got the reducer in here, created Automagically for you from the create slice function, and you got the actual action, which is a normal action. Take a look on it. It's actually an action creator with payload. And this one takes an argument as only the actual action we want. Nothing more, nothing less. You're not going to be providing the state or something like that, but still, this is going to be automatically provided and created for you, and you got the reducer to care of all of it right here. And you don't need to do a switch case or create this really big reducer ugly function. Redux Toolkit takes care of all of it all, and it makes it look absolutely amazing. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, because this is just a basic example showing you guys what you can do with it. I'm also going to get rid of that. We're still going to have reducer and everything. Now for the actual application we create, we have actually an anime list, right? So an anime list is actually going to be per pages. Each page have a couple of animes and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look into the GraphQL in here and the actual schema it provides. So there is actually a page. So this page, you just use this query with a page number, so it has some pagination going on behind the scenes, so you can go 0, 1, 2, and you can paginate throughout this using the per page in here, and you can have whatever per page you want. Now the page, if you take a look on it, it does have a media, has a users for that page. It has staff, has characters, studios, media list, many stuff in there. But all we should be carrying here, because all we want is actually to render out a couple of animes that are hot for today. So we need to grab a list of animes, a couple of data about this anime, description, the title, the cover or banner image, tags for this particular anime, and this just basic stuff, right? And this all being held up for us on the media query in here. So we have to query page first. Then inside of that page, you have to query the media, which has all these types ready-made for us. Okay, so that's basically what we want there, and that's what we want for the actual state to be in. So the initial page state in here should have the actual page state, and we should be having a list of animes for those. So we can just have anime list, and it should be an array. For now, it should be an array, but this is doesn't have any types to work with or something like that. So this way, we're not going to be able to work with it properly with TypeScript. So for that case, we already got actually the actual schema of the GraphQL. Now, the second thing we want is actually how to provide, or what are the queries that the GraphQL is going to send in order to grab this data from this GraphQL server. So let's go ahead and write the GraphQL queries first in order to be able to generate or auto-generate the actual TypeScript interfaces for us. Then they can make us sure that we can use those TypeScript interfaces ready-made here, and we can just use them right into our state and have them all types together nicely using TypeScript. So let's go ahead and do this, and all we have to do about that is actually creating or adding a brand new script. So this script is basically all it does is going to use the local schema, and we're going to be having a new kind of GraphQL queries going on, and this is going to just combine them together and generate the interfaces throughout those. Okay, so actually before adding this script in here, we have to add a query at least in order to make this work. Now inside of the GraphQL folder in here, we can go ahead and add let's see, so GraphQL folder, and I'm seeing that we should so let's go ahead and add the first to set up Apollo GraphQL server or the actual client itself. So I'm going to add TypeScript, and for this one I'm going to do Apollo client. In fact, I'm going to export this one. It's going to create Apollo, or create pretty much client. So let's go ahead and import this one from Apollo client. Or so let's go grab, I believe its name is Apollo client. So I'm going to import this from Apollo, then / clients. As far as I can tell, this is not how you spell Apollo clients. So Apollo clients, and this one takes a couple of options, like the URI you want to just point into, and that we want a basic URI, which is this one, but it should be a GraphQL instead of a GraphQL, so you shouldn't actually forget about that stupid mistake there. And also we have to provide which cache it should work with. For now, we're just gonna use in-memory cache. So Apollo GraphQL is gonna cache the request in memory, so if you close the browser or something, the cache is gone and you have to redo it from scratch. But there's other types of cache in here, you can really learn them more. But for now, in-memory cache we should do the job for us perfectly and without any issues. Now we got the Apollo client in here, we can go ahead and export it, we can use it, whatever. Now let's go ahead and provide this throughout the provider throughout this application. So I'm going to be using Apollo provider, and I'm going to provide it with a client. I'm going to import Apollo. I can't actually spell Apollo client properly. So let's copy this and put it down there. And the reason we're actually doing this Apollo provider, just wrapping the actual application, because this is the main entry point for our application. And this is actually going to be using the React's context API. So this Apollo client briefly is going to be available throughout all the components inside of this app component. So all the children pretty much gonna have this Apollo client available either throughout hooks or higher order components that React can provide throughout these. Pretty cool. So we got the basic stuff set up, we got everything we're gonna be needing. Now it's actually time to go ahead and create some simple queries that you can use for GraphQL, then we can use to generate these TypeScript interfaces. So inside of the app, what I'd like to do is actually create another services folder, and this one is going to be all about services. What I mean by services is like a singleton class object instance that allows us to do API requests, either RESTful API requests or GraphQL requests, which is in our case is more about GraphQL. And I would like to create another folder inside of these services. I'm going to name in this. It's going to be more about anime. And so I'm gonna be naming it anime page or something like that. If I'm getting this right, or page service. I'm gonna name this anime service. Okay, it should make more sense to it that way. So in index.typescript, this should be the entry point. And I said before, this is a class, and I love to put it this way as a class, because once you put it as a class, you got all the functions beneath each other's, and all of these functions actually all they do is just like do request and receive response, and hand them properly, then handle or hand them into the actual React components. Then, they encapsulate and abstract all the teeny tiny details. Or you provide like like a zoomed out API that you can use. So that's the point I want to do right here. So I'll name this anime service. I'm going to be a class. I'm going to export default. It's going to be new anime service. And that's basically all we have to do right there. So this is the anime service. We've got the class, we've got the instance server up, and let's go ahead and create a queries. So I'm going to create a new folder called, or pretty much new file called queries.typescript. And this file, in fact, inside of the anime service, is going to be all about queries that belong into that service only. If you want another service and another queries related to another service, you put it inside of that folder, and that way everything is actually organized the best way possible, and you can quickly go through your code and quickly understand which file belongs to whom and all the kind of stuff in there. Pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and jump into creating the query in here. So for a query, all you have to do is like create a regular query, make sure to export it, do a const, and what I love to name our queries, actually give them all capital case query names at the beginning there. So for example, get anime page. Okay, and this should be pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to use the GraphQL or GQL tag, which is from the GraphQL tag in here. And you don't have to install this because it's actually going to be installed from, or pretty much like with the actual GraphQL and Apollo, module is going to be installing. So we got the tag in here, and this is where you pretty much provide all of those. If you're not familiar like how to work with that on React or never do it before, well, this is all you have to do it. Like inside of the template literals, like style components does, you have to put it in here. You have to put like the whole query schema in here inside of that. And likely if you've got something like GraphQL and you've got some Apollo GraphQL extensions, for example, this one installed is going to give you a lot of like, help and enter license and, code coloring and code hints and all that kind of stuff. So make sure to install those. I believe there's another extension called GraphQL on itself, and it got it installed. Yeah, that one. And that one should also tell you like how GraphQL should, it gives you some enter license and color highlighting and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, extensions do really help with all kind of these type of stuff, okay? And they are really important for you to know. Now for this one, all we have to do like run a query, and make sure to name your query. Like right now, name it a perfect name, because later on you're going to use this name inside of your TypeScript kind of like files, and the interface is going to be generated with this name prepended on it. So make sure to choose the right name for it that is descriptive enough to the current query and current request, and the data is going to be like querying out from the server. Okay, so we're going to do get anime page, and this one is going to be like a simple query. And for the page itself, as we did before, it takes a page, which is an integer and it is required, and a per page, which is also an integer and required. So we got page in here, we got per page. Now if we take a look on the page in there, and the page, we just like have to, like we do forwarding the argument. So for example, this one, you can imagine this is a function. It takes the actual arguments in here, it takes the values and then pass them through to the actual query. And this is where the GraphQL query goes through. So you provide them to page, then per page. And the reason I'm like prepending a $sign in here, and this is how you actually tell that this is a variable name on GraphQL or on this GraphQL tag in Apollo GraphQL. Otherwise, it won't work for you properly. So pretty cool. Now we got the page. Now we have to actually do something inside of the page. The page has a media, and media has all of these different types inside of it. So let's go ahead and grab the actual data we want. We want an ID. We want a description of the current item. And I'm sorry, I need a media first. So we need to provide media. Then we can do ID, and luckily media is lowercase. Cool. We got description. Maybe you're going to be needing a title for the actual anim. Also, we're going to be needing a cover image, like which the cover image is. And there's actually different kind of like, sizes for the cover image. I might need something like a medium. There is extra large, large, all of that, but I'm just gonna need only that. And basically for the title also, if you take a look on this, I'm not sure where is the title, but it should be somewhere in here. There's a lot of fields, like ridiculously a lot. Yeah, I don't know where is the title actually, but yeah, so for example, take a look, where is that? The ID is actually an integer, a tag is a string. Yeah, so yeah, let's go ahead and use it from that perspective. Okay, so title in here has actually a different formats, like Romaji, I guess, has English, it has native, which is native Japanese name of the actual anime. But for us, we're only gonna be needing English, and that should make it pretty self-explanatory, I guess. So that's the basic query. That's all we need for that query. I didn't add everything, but yeah, I'm gonna use those basic stuff for now to get started, get like a basic request going on and grab the data from it. Then we maybe can add other fields and add them to the UI. So now we got basic queries to get started work with. Now let's go ahead and actually use the power of Apollo CLI alongside TypeScript and the schema we got already, the GraphQL schema, to generate the interfaces needed for our the query in here and to be able to use it throughout the application. So this one, I'm going to be creating another script in here, and it's going to be beneath this one. So let me add a comma, go beneath this one. I'm going to name this for one schema generate. I think this should do a pretty good name. So yeah, I mean that should make it happen pretty quick. And also I want to add like -watch into it, because this one is gonna run a watch server. So every single time you change the actual query, like this one, all it does check for is actually the GQL tag in here. So whenever you do a change into it, it's gonna rebuild everything. It's gonna regenerate the actual interfaces, the TypeScript interfaces for you. So let's go and do Apollo. I'm gonna use in the code gen command in here. So code gen and generate, and this one, all it does basically is just it tells it to generate a particular schema for a particular language. So likely we're using TypeScript, and TypeScript is supported enough, and we have to provide local schema file, I believe, and this is where you tell which direction or the destination of your file. So it goes GraphQL, then GraphQL-schema.json. Okay, then you give it the target, and we want to use TypeScript. And last but not least, you give it the tag name, and this one, which tag name it does check for, and the tag name is basically this is the tag name. So we want it to check for GQL, and whenever it finds GQL, it pretty much does a code generation for it. Okay, and last but not least, we have to provide watch. Pretty cool. So that's all we need to do. Let's go and create a separate terminal for this one. Let me just take this a bit up, and I'm gonna run yarn schema generate -watch, and this should make it pretty self-explanatory already. And this one is gonna just grab the Apollo CLI for us, and it's gonna start watching. Now the schema has been generated for us, and everything is going good the right way. So in here we got targets and wrote 2 files on target TypeScript. If you take a look on your project, you're gonna find two new folders generated for you, and they are pretty self-explanatory. They're called __ generated __. Okay, and this one is actually a global types generator for you, which is basically empty because we don't have any global queries we're actually using. That is good. The second one, the most important one, is actually generated instead of the service, and it's just underneath and beside the actual queries file, which basically has the actual query we generated in here, we created. So it has this generated, and this one, it has get anim page, which is the same name as this one, which is pretty great for us. Take a look on it. You're gonna find all the interfaces you need for the TypeScript and everything pretty much you need. And this one is actually English is either string or null, which is brought from the actual schema in here, and it did a combination, it brought everything for us and generated this awesome interface for us to work with. Pretty cool. Now we can go ahead and use those, and we can, for example, say like get any page, and it has a page inside of it. Then we can go inside here and there to grab that part. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and use that, and we can get started from there. So I can go back into here, and I'm gonna change the name of this one. I'm not gonna name it anime list. I'm gonna name it anime page, because that's what it's named, just to keep the naming convention together, and that should be identical. Now for this one, if you take a look on the types again, it's called get anime page, and it has like get anime page, which has a media, and the media has where's the media? And the media has all of that type of stuff. Okay, it's either null or not, and also it's either array or null, which makes it pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so we get anime. Where is that? Get anime page. Yeah, that's not actually on the into license, so we can manually import that. So get anime page from, you just go back to, or it's actually on the same directory, right? Oh, yeah, we have to go back to like, well, the files are contained, for example, services, the anime service, then generated, the get anime page. A pretty long, ridiculous name, but it's worth it. Okay, we're going to use that, and we can make it that way. So get anime page only. Yeah, this should refer to our type. Yeah, I'm sorry. This can't be happening here, because we have to provide an interface for this one to work. And for the interface, I need actually my naming convention, or how I put it together, is actually create a new file called types that has all the types regarding the current container. So I want to love doing it like types.typescript, and all the types exist in here. Then we can import it right here. Okay, so we can export interface, and we can name this homepage state, because this is the actual main state of the homepage container in there. And we want anime page, so get anime page, and this should be auto important for us. Pretty sweet. Okay, so we go back here, we got initial state, and it's homepage state. All right, and we have to provide anime page. I don't know, anime page, what should be defaulted to? It should be defaulted into null. Okay, luckily null defaults exist for us. And type, the extended proper anime page is declared here. Okay, type null is not assigned to type get anime page. Oh, yeah, I should did like get anime page then page, because that makes more sense, because we want to access the actual page. Okay, makes sense. So we are not access this one, because this one should make it either null or not, and this should work for us pretty well. Now we can go ahead and add the new reducer using our awesome Redux toolkit, and we can just go ahead and use like the set like whatever. So it's basically as you're naming your actions, this is how you do it in here on the reducer. So you basically like create actions, and the reducer is going to take care of it all, and the slice is going to take care of it all, and you got everything ready made for you. Okay, so all we need to do is like to set anime page, for example. So this one takes the status set before, and it takes the action, and the action is going to be basically like the actual anime that we want there. Okay, so that's what we want to do here, and we can just go ahead and provide it. This should be a method, regular method. Okay, so for this one, all we have to do like state anime page dot action dot payload, and the action already got the type, so you got either payload or not. And yeah, I'm guessing in here you can also provide it like the type of payload it does expect, which makes it a bit better, I believe. I never tested that, but yeah, that sounds like a really interesting kind of thing to do. But yeah, nonetheless, so that should make it pretty great. Anyway, And we can go ahead and export setAnimePage already, and that should make it pretty great for us to go ahead and get started working with. Now we got this one, we got the reducer, we got the action set up for us. Now let's go ahead, it's actually the moment of truth. We can go ahead and now set up a service or like a service method that's going to take care of like GraphQL sending a request, grabbing the data from the GraphQL API from like the anime GraphQL API we are using, then it can populate the Redux there eventually to make it work together. Okay, makes sense. Let's go ahead and do that inside of like the services, anime service, and inside of index.js or TypeScript. We're using TypeScript, by the way. So I wanted this to be asynchronous. I wanted this like get anime page. All right. And what type, like which the page number we want. I'm not going to have this as a default. So I want to make this to be a number, and it should be a required. And I want to have like a per page, and this one should be like a default value of 5. I'm guessing 5 should make it good. Okay. And this one should take a promise. All right. So promise, and a promise should expect to get anime page and a page. So we should return the actual page from that. Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do that so we can go ahead and grab the response. But I want to like always make sure to wrap them using try and catch. So that's why I'm doing it here. So I'm wrapping all of those using try and catch. So I'm getting const response. I'm going to use async await. That's why I declare the method on top there using async. Makes sense. And I'm going to use the Apollo client we got that's going to be imported from the actual GraphQL file we did set up earlier. So we're going to do Apollo GraphQL, going to use query, we're going to provide, I don't know, I did double parentheses. So I'm going to provide like a query. I'm going to use the query we already did. I'm going to provide it with variables, and the variables are page and per page. Pretty easy. So this kind of structure makes it super easy to work with. And in fact, if you make it using these services and you put all the requests and all like request response logic inside of like a single method that takes care of it all, using really elegant and tidy promise API, well, you know, all is abstracted in a single place. Especially this is an advanced application. This project is meant for huge and big kind of like, you know, applications and projects and like, you know, like 5-10 years projects with maintenance and future scales and all the kind of stuff. So you imagine yourself having like hundreds of functions in here, and they can all live together in peace and harmony, and they can make it all work together because they are pretty tidy and making self-explanatory. Pretty cool. Now we got the response and everything. Now I want to check if there's no response or no response.data. So all I want to do is just like throw up a new error and cannot get anime list. All right. Otherwise, all we have to do is just like return response.data. Makes sense. Pretty cool. Now we got the catch in here. All we have to do simply for the catch, I want to just like go ahead and throw up the error. You can do more handling in here for the catch specifically on your application or your case scenario, but I would just like to throw it, then you can use or handle it later on. That is not a big of a deal. Pretty cool. Now let's go ahead back into our like homepage, and this is the moment of truth, and this is where we want to like go ahead and like ask for the homepage or the actual anime page data that's going to be getting from the GraphQL API. Then we can go ahead and render it out. So I want to create a new function. I'm going to like fetch anime page. Okay, let's name it that way. And yeah, so we can make sure to use this as asynchronous just to make sure that it works. And I want to use like const. I want to like anime page equals await. Then I'm going to use anime service get anime page. I'm going to provide 0. I'm going to leave there as a default. So if any errors happen, anyway, so all I do like console log error and error. Pretty easy. Now for the anime page, we either got void or something. So if anime page believe this anime page should be something, right? Yeah, it is. So anime page now should have like a media, then a media should have, which is an array, then we can loop through it and all the kind of stuff in there. Now, we don't care about that. So all we have to do is just get the anime page. Let me go ahead and make sure that the API is actually working by just console logging what the anime page is. So I want to do console log anime page, okay? And I want to call this using use effects. So on did mount, we want to call that right into the point. So get fetch anime page, just call it up that way, and that should make it work. Now let's go ahead and see what's going on behind the scenes in here. Let's take a look on the actual console. I'm gonna open up this. So we got store does not have a valid reducer. Make sure the argument passed to combined users objects. Yeah, I guess I never actually combined or put something into the store. That's my bad. And I should make this home page. Yeah, home page. This should be a reducer instead of a slice, because it really is a reducer. It's not a full slice. Okay, that's the slice is reducer. Okay, makes sense. If you take a look one more time, we refresh. Is defined but never used. I'm not sure what is going on there, but it should work. I'm not sure why it doesn't. Yeah, I'm dumb enough that I haven't called that one. Haven't called the home page here. Yeah, it happens. But anyway, we got the home page. Now, finger crossed, that should work. Response.text is not a function, cannot convert. Undefined or null to objects, and posts. Take a look, request in here, GraphQL, strict origin when cross origin. Yeah, makes sense. So I'm guessing in here I'm having like a wrong address. So after I changed it to GraphQL AnyList.co, I think this is the right one after I just like debugged it for a couple of minutes. And also the second one, it seems like we got some issue with per page. So it says like per page has never been used here, which is pretty weird, never used on get anim page. So I'm wondering why per page, yeah, per page has never been used, which is pretty ridiculous, by the way. Take a look again. There doesn't seem to be any errors. Error provided does not contain a stack trace. We don't care about those. This is actually just warnings. And there you go. We got the page, we got the media, and we got the 5 animes we requested for. We got enter word, the distance. I don't know what's the anime name here. Cowboy, Bebop. Okay, Trigon. Yeah, we wanna Attack on Titan, if you know that. I know me. I'm just like that guy who's just middle about anime. I watch a lot of like anime. So yeah, I know a couple of them, and I really did enjoy watching all of them. So yeah, just a quick notice about me and myself. Okay, so we got everything in here. We got the anime page. It's being loaded for us. We got the anime media, the title. We got description, cover image, which is I'm guessing this is yeah. If you take a look on it, it's a cover image. It's a medium. And I don't want a medium. I want more like a large, I believe, or extra large. I'm not sure which one of variables. So let's go ahead and use extra large. We always can, you know, like minimize these, and it can always look good. So take a look again on those. So extra large. Yeah, we got extra large in there. Makes sense. Pretty cool there. Okay, sweet. Now we got the anime in here, we all got the images and everything. Now let's go ahead and render the list we got in here. And in fact, before rendering, we need to put those into the store, and we make sure that those are living in the store indeed, not outside or something like that. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to go to the index.typescript in here, and I'm going to use the dispatch and everything that's going to be used right there. So I'm going to do in here const action dispatch, and this one's going to take a dispatch, which is basically the dispatch function going to be provided by React's Redux. This one's going to return an object, and this object, the way you love to put it in here, because this one is just going to be basically an object of different methods that's going to dispatch the actual Redux actions. And I love putting it that way because it's much simpler to track it on a file. And in fact, it's actually on top of the actual component. So you immediately realize that, oh, this is a dispatch and this is what this component is actually dispatching. And this is how it's connected to the actual reducer store. So it should make a really good sense to look at it and see exactly what's going on behind the scenes in there. So I want to do like set anime page on top. It takes a page, which is basically gets anime page. All right. And that one should call a dispatch and sets anime page. And this one, in fact, is going to be imported exclusive in here from the homepage class, which is the actual action we just, exported. And you see how cool is that? We got the action and the reducer both created with just like a couple of lines of code. We didn't go and create a separate action and a separate reducer. Then we use that here and there, and it makes it much more complicated and much more harder to put code in and use Redux in the app. But Redux Toolkit makes it super simple and straight to the point. All right, so we're using here the page, and that should make it good already. So we are good to go in there. We got here. So take a look in here for anime page, if it is available. So we're gonna go ahead and call that, but I need to go ahead and use this one. So I want to go ahead, so set anime page. So I want to use dispatch, which I want to use the use of dispatch, which is provided from the actual template in here, which is batteries included, and it has like TypeScript included. Which makes a lot of sense to be using this one actually. And this one should be passed into the action dispatch. All right. Otherwise it won't work, but that way it should make it work. So just putting it that way. Anime page. We just save that. And there you go. That should save the actual anime and it should put it on the state. And we should all be happy about it to work that way. Pretty cool. Now we're fetching the anime, we're putting it there. Now let's go ahead and create another component inside of the homepage container that's going to take care of rendering and grabbing the actual anime page list from the Redux store, then rendering it all into their page. And this is pretty much going to be the final step into this, just to demonstrate how Redux, GraphQL, and everything can work together in a professional grade, big application with all of that setup we created over there. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to name it anime list, or I'll just basically call it hot anime. Makes more sense to use that way. So import React again, as we do always. So React, I'm going to export a function which is just hot anime props. In fact, we don't need props, so I'm not going to provide any interfaces or something that, they won't make sense here because we don't need them anyway. And we got the hot anime in here. Looks good, looks pretty interesting. Now, how we can provide or how we can grab this data from the state, and to actually, or pretty much to access the state, we need to access the homepage reducer state and grab the anime page list. So we can do it normally with use selector and all of that, but what I love to use actually is like create selector library. So if you're not familiar with create selector library, it's just like a basic library made up for Redux and React to work together in order to be able to facilitate and make it easier to create and like grab the state and make sure to like grab just a teeny pieces of the state, like the smallest fields, the smaller properties of the state without the hard parts, without putting a lot of code, and you can have those files like living inside of the containers, and you can use them across the whole application. So I'm going to add those, and I'm going to do our yarn add reselect, which is the create selector, and the other one we want is actually Redux logger to add a little bit of login for development cases to our application. So we wait a bit of these to actually get finished and installed into projects. And there you go. So they are both installed, ready to made, and we can get started working with those. So we go to the home page, we could create selectors file, and I love to name them selectors because pretty self-explanatory what it does. And on the top in here, I'm gonna make like do select homepage, which basically this one is gonna take a state, and all it does return is actually so this state is going to be any in this case. So it returns state dots any, and this is where you access your reducer name. So if you go to the store, the reducer name is actually homepage. So all you have to call is like state.homepage, and that's pretty much it for that case. Okay. So y const is global script file. Okay. Whatever. So let's go and ignore that. I'm going to do export const, make select, and we want to select a specific case, which is the anime page. So we want to make select anime page, and this one is going to have create selector. And this function create selector is going to be imported from the reselect we just downloaded. And this one, in this case, what it does is going to actually, you give it a bunch of selectors and you can select from. So for example here, like the first argument it takes like the global state that you want to select from. So the global state is actually the select homepage, which is a function itself. So all you have to do is just like provide it that way, and it should call it with the actual state provided there. The second one is actually a callback, and this callback, what it does is actually going to give you, after it calls this one, it's going to grab the homepage for you. So this one is going to like return the homepage with that. And you can access whatever inside of the homepage. For example, homepage, we want to access the anime page. Pretty simple. Now reselect and create selector made it much simpler for us to work with that, because all it does, it goes to query the global state, it grabs us the actual little tiny reducer homepage, and after that we access the little tiny field, which is the anime page. Pretty simple, and that's why I talked like create selector or reselect are a pretty good combination to make these work together. Alright, so let's go back in here. We got so the hot anime in here, I'm gonna use the state. So I'm gonna do const state selector, and I'm gonna do create selector, and every single time you want to use another create selector, you just like call the create selector, then you can combine them together, like all the create selectors you did. Like for example, this one is a create selector function. Well, you can use this and a bunch of others all together. So I'm going to use this like make select anime page. And by the way, the naming convention of this one for a selector is always to prepend it with a make, then select, then whatever like property you want to select from that, just to make it pretty self-explanatory. Now it takes a callback, and the callback should actually return an object. And in that case, the callback is actually the arguments are, ordered by that way. So here for the anime page, we're going to provide anime page, and we want to return the anime page itself. Now the anime page is just like, any for now, but we can use it later on. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go and grab the data from this. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to grab or destruct the anime page. I'm going to do use up selector. Remember, we're going to use the custom selectors we created with the types, and we want to just use like the state selector real quick in there. And that's it. We're good to go. We got the anime page, and after it gets populated into the actual Redux store, we're going to get it right over here. Now let's go ahead and render the actual anime styles and everything we want into that particular part. So I'm going to do, I want to make sure like always put the state selector on top of the actual component. So to do that, all I want to do is basically create a container for this. So hot anime container. So it's called styled, and I'm going to call div. And for this one, I'm going to have like a maximum width of 280 pixels or something for that. Also make sure width takes 100%. Height is going to be 100% as well. It's going to be display flex. Okay, so this is the actual anime. Also, I want to have like another anime item for this. So what I want to do is actually I want to like have an image of the anime. Then beneath it, some like the anime title. Then we can go from there. So anime cover Okay, anime cover. So I'm gonna call this div as well. So for this one, it's gonna have like the width to be auto to preserve the aspect ratio, and I want to also have like height in here. For example, height is gonna be 10 em or something. Inside of it, there will be like a child, which is the image child, and it's gonna have also width to be auto, height to be 100% again, and that should make it going pretty great. Now also I want to like do anime title. Okay, so I want to do style dot span, or basically do we want like an H6 or something. So we want a font size of something like 19 pixels and a color of completely black, and a font weight should be something like 600, I guess. That should make it look pretty great. So far so good. And also I want to give it some like margin to the top of about like 8 pixels. So those are actually going to be combined inside of like the hot anime container, and I want to call this like anime container. So I'm gonna call this like more like anime item container, okay? Because this is gonna represent a single anime container, if that makes sense. So for the width, I am gonna make this. All right, I'm gonna give it a maximum, or just gonna give it a single width of 12 em or something. The height is gonna be 16 em. We will see about those in a sec. Display flex and a flex direction. I want this to be a column as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and render these and see how it looks already. So we got hot anime container, then we're gonna have anime item container, and for this one is actually, we got a list of anime, so we have to loop through those and see how they are actually going on. So if we check in here, if anime page, like if no anime page in here, so I want to do a different type of checking. So if we do like is empty anime page, so for that we do like anime page dot, or not anime page, or anime page dot length equals 0. I think this one has a media inside of it. So not anime page or not anime page dot media or anime page dot media dot length equals 0. So that should make it a little bit better and more self-explanatory, I guess. Okay, so we got this empty name in here. So if it is actually empty, all we have to do is actually just like return null, so we render nothing. You can add load in or whatever, but I'm not gonna bother myself doing that right here. And the actual anime container in here, we have to loop through all the animes and we render all of those. So go anime page dot media dot map, and it's gonna be like anime, like a particular anime for those. Then we can have the anime container. Inside of it, can have an anime cover. Then we have an image, and yeah, we can like use the image in here. So we can do anime dot, and in fact, this should be okay. So we can go ahead and tell it about a style like get anime page. But what I think better we can do, actually to make this as more like a TypeScript friendly, is we can go ahead and use like the make select anime in here. So we tell it about the exact state that we want to use to make that work. So I can go ahead and inside like the up, create another file called types.typescript, and this one is going to import interface I root state. Okay. And this one is going to hold all the reducers, all with their state. So just like for TypeScript, to make it work properly. So for that, we got like the home page, and we got this I home page state. that's going to be pointing right into there. And make sure you name this field as the reducers, otherwise it's going to be really creepy for you. Sometimes it causes you some issues, okay? So in that case, we're gonna reducers. So I root states should be importing that, and we should access the I home page, and the I home page should have an anime page with get anime page, which should make them all types together in a really smooth way. As clear see now we got the types like get anime page. Alright, so we can go in and use that. We got media, we got everything. So object is possibly null. Yeah, we're already checking for that, I guess. Okay. Media. Oh, okay. And anime page media, then anime page media map. Then we got an anime in here, which is basically an anime media or a null. So we can do anime. We can use the new feature of JavaScript, which is like inline check-in of the current value of either null or not. So if this is actually null, it's not gonna be executed. That's why we add in this question mark there, just to make sure. So we got this one cover page. We got we're gonna need to use the cover image, and instead of the cover image, we wanna like extra large. And I'm guessing this is either string or null. So make sure or empty string. Okay. Because literally everything is a string, so we have to check for that before we render it. And we got the anime cover. Now let's go ahead and do the next one, which is anime title. So for this, we're going to do anime dot title dot English. Okay, sounds pretty interesting. Let me go ahead and add a little bit of like spacing between those, and I want to do this like justify content, so space between, or let's do space evenly. That should make it better, I guess. So now we can go back here, we can go in and use the anime list. All we have to do is just like put it that way, which is hot anime, just that way. You don't care about like checking if the data exists or not, because all is going to happen behind the scenes. The Redux store is going to take care of it. The state is going to be populated correctly, and all the stuff is going to happen in behind the scenes for you. So that's all you should be caring about. Just save that. We go back here. Let's go ahead and see how it should work on that. So first things first, take a look on the elements, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of anime going on, or nothing is being rendered actually. So anime page. Let's go ahead and use the actual Redux logger, because it's gonna help us a lot debug the application and see what's going on behind the scenes. So that's, we're gonna use it on the store in here. I'm gonna do like whatever here. I'm just gonna create the actual Redux logger. So we can do const middleware equals get default middleware. Then we can use this get default middleware. Then we can just go ahead and concat with Redux logger. So and that should make pretty good sense here, because we got the logger and we got everything we would need. So Redux logger there. So there you go. Yeah, we might need some declaration types for that, so we can go ahead and install that real quick for Redux logger. and after it's installed, we can go in and use that. So we can use this middleware down here, just pass it through, and that is it. Okay, pretty promising. Let's go back, see what's actually going on. So it's actually failed to compile, but there you go. So we already got Redux logger working. So we got set anime, and it's being set in the anime with a payload of a page. Now the home page has an anime page, which has a page inside of it. Then there is a media inside of it. Okay, I think I'm doing some wrong checking for all of that, because right now here, it has like anime page, then inside of it there's page, then there's media. But I think I'm having it wrong in my TypeScript. So if you take a look here, this should be .page, not media, which I'm completely getting wrong why this is happening. So I should be calling this anime page .media. Yeah, because I guess I'm returning here the data, but I should return data.page. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So let's go back here. That shouldn't change anyway. So if you take a look right now, we've got anime page to be undefined, which is, I don't know why. So we got media. Yeah, where is that? So index.typescript. So this one is an anime page. Right? Because this is going to be a page. Return a response.data.page. So let me just data, and see what is actually going on inside of there. I think this is a capital page. Let me double check. Yeah, data is a capital page. All right, makes sense. Okay, so I'm having that one here. Let's see what's going on up there. So we got anime page. We're putting it immediately down there. So the anime page. We're getting this response.data.page. Yeah. All right, but we're not rendering anything pretty much. That's weird. I want to know why this is happening. And yeah, we should like do isEmpty, not isEmpty. So we should remove the not. And yeah, I'm guessing that's what's blocking it. And there you go. So you got the anime in here. We got like a bunch of lists of them. Witch Hunter Robin. You got, a couple of them. I mean, those are like a pretty basic, and I think the cover images are pretty small. So we might want to play with these. You can go through this. You can play around those. So for example, width I can increase to 14. This one can be to 18. This one to 13 maybe, to make them even bigger. 15. Yeah, I guess that should make it look good. So anime item container in here. We can also do align items to be on the center. So everything should go into the center, even the text beneath it. And even the text, I mean, that's a pretty big text. We don't want the font size to be that big. We just want it to be looking good enough. I mean, 500, I guess, should make it look better in that case. And there you go. You got yourself like a pretty good, and it has like all the animes in here. If you want like more data to be fetched from the API, well, I mean, yeah, you could have all of that. You can, for example, popularity. You see, what is the popularity here? You can see average score, which we can render in here. So all we have to do, if you want like to add a new field, likely we got everything set up. We got the watch happening, working in here, which, basically watching for this queries. If you add another query, it's gonna compile it down to TypeScript. Yeah, if you change it, this one is going to compile it down. It's going to add the new fields, and everything's going to be ready-made for you. So you don't have to change even a single line of code. So everything is going to be put together for you, which is pretty awesome in that case. So for example, if we go, where is that? So for example, we got average score. we maybe need like a journ. Like, what's the actual type of this? Maybe. So we can go and save. That already got an issue. Did you mean journers? Yeah. I mean, let's get rid of that, so we don't need it. So we got average score in here. If you take a look on the generated files, we got average score in here. So already like populated for us and updated, which is pretty sweet. Now, if we go to the actual whole anim in here where we are rendering, we can say, for example, like a span or like a B for a bold, and we can make something score or average score, and we can make that. So we can say anime dot average score, and take a look in here. And there you go. We got already an average score for us. And so average score. Yeah, I maybe wanna just take this a bit smaller. Oh my god, that's too small. There you go. So we got an average score as well, working out on top of there. Yeah, so I mean, styling isn't our like necessary thing to do for that. If you want styling, you would have it a bit differently, but I mean that's looking pretty great. All right, and we can have like more animes being added, and they can all get together, I guess, in the right way. So if you want to like get anime per page, and we want to like provide, we want to get 20 anime per page. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty huge. I agree. Maybe you want to like do a flex wrap for these to work. Yeah, there you go. They're being wrapped correctly, and you got a pretty big list of anime that is all working together. If you choose another ridiculous number like a 200, I know that's gonna take a bit of time to take effect, but still, you got a 200 anime working on in here. So you refresh it. You maybe want to add another like a loading thing. Make it add, yeah, you can do it. So here, instead of returning null, you can just return loading and 3 dots. You can figuratively find a better way to do it, but it's Chrissy loading, and it loads all of that anime, and you got the full list of animes from One Piece, Naruto. Yeah, I know a few of those, but yeah, looks interesting, and I did really like putting some kind of a project, like a unique idea differently, and anime was the good way to go. And this cool website, I really appreciate it. Yeah, we provided with an awesome GraphQL API to grab anime and all the data we want. So yeah, so hopefully guys, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video tutorial. I know that was a quite long video tutorial and quite complicated, but for those of you who wants to be professionals in React with Redux and Redux store loggers and using GraphQL and all mutations and TypeScript and all the kind of interfaces and all this kind of complicated stuff together, well, you have been in the right place, and hopefully you learned something. So if you want something new, something like that, let me know in the comments. I'll be very, very happy to, just like take a look on your thoughts and your ideas and just come up with new stuff like this, and why not? So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully guys, you're gonna enjoy the next videos as well. Catch you hopefully in the next ones.